Hey YouTube, it's Smithel here. Thanks for checking out the video. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit the like, comment, and subscribe. And keep up to date with our most recent videos. Join the Discord, follow us on Twitter, anything you guys want to do. We would greatly appreciate it. So thanks again, have a great day.
Welcome to episode 4 of the One Tap Gaming Podcast. Take 2 again. I'll get it right, I promise. There's apparently a hotkey. I need to go and unbind all of my hotkeys because I think I'm hitting it on accident on my keyboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so welcome. My name is Solemn FPS, and joined today by my two lovely co-hosts are Rums. Rums, what's going on today, bro?
Hey guys.
And Smithel, what's going on with you, man?
Still not a whole lot.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We're gonna do our weekend review one more time. I had kind of a rough week with school, rough week with life, but we're getting through it. Rough week in Valorant, kind of hitting all of our stacks at once. Maybe we'll end out the month kind of okay. Trying to find a comfortable main, I guess, set of agents. I like Phoenix a lot right now. My performance with him has been pretty good. Trying to look kind of like at Sova. I wish I could play Breach, but every time I play Breach, I just crater. Um, D-ranked a lot, lost a lot of games this week, so hopefully we can pick it back up on the swing back for the upcoming week. But Rums, how's your week?
Yeah, man. I won like 3 or 4 in a row. Was doing pretty good. One of the interesting things that happened is I outfragged a plat 2 and a plat 1 by
Nice.
2 or 3 kills. Yeah, still no promotion. I cry. I'm gold 1, bro. Like I can't promote. I
It's
can't promote. All
understandable.
right. It's just nothing that I do.
I don't know. The rank system's trash, but that's
Yeah,
another topic.
we'll talk about that
Smith,
Mm.
next week.
Smith, what do you have going on this week, man?
Similar to you, it was a rough Valorant week. I mean, so I tried to hear you guys out whenever you said, "Hey, Sage is just going to be in line right now. She's not going to be busted." Well, Sage feels really bad. I mean, as somebody that played her primarily before, and I think I had like a 70% win rate playing Sage in ranked. Um, yeah, she's kind of unplayable right now. I mean, and I think a part of it is, like we mentioned last week, where it's not so much the heal of 100 being gone, but the heal per tick is just way too low. It feels bad. The wall doesn't really do anything. The orbs feel fine. The orbs are in line, but you know, every situation where I was playing her, I was like, I just feel like any other agent would have been more beneficial to the team
Yeah,
uh, versus the new Sage. So that kind of feels bad. But
Sure.
like you, D-ranked, as I try to find a new main, I'm kind of going back to Omen and Viper, who I played a lot in beta, and I'm trying to basically get on the Breach as well, because I'm hearing a lot of people in Reddit when I put feelers out there, and people are basically saying, "Hey, take Sage, just replace with Breach, and you're fine."
fair enough. Breach has been kind of an auto-clue I've seen in most games. A lot of his flashes are super, super, super powerful. So, from that,
Yeah.
we have our main topic this week. Our The title of the episode is just roll with it. Roll is in ROLE, and here we're going to be talking about the different roles within Valorant and which agents kind of slot into those roles, at least from a general like attack FPS standpoint. So a lot of people might not know this, but in traditional attack FPSs, there are defined roles on the team. There's the theoretical roles, which is like IGL. They make the main calls, the plays,
Mm-hmm.
the strategies going into rounds. Then you have things like an entry fragger. They're the people
Mm-hmm.
rounding corners. They're taking the peaks. They're taking the initial duels where you're allowing maybe your main fragger or a support agent to kind of trade off of you to make the profitable trades in the round. And then you
Right.
have like a support and some stuff like that. And most of that stays kind of true for Valorant, except specifically in Valorant, there are some added benefits to these roles, either with like sub themes or with new roles in and of themselves. Specifically with something I'm going to call Intel, is what I've been calling it since the beginning of this game, which I think adds
Mm-hmm.
a unique point to this game that a lot of people might not have thought about, or at least are starting to recognize now as the meta kind of develops. So, um, the first role I want to talk about is the intel role. I think it's the
Mm-hmm.
most important role you can actually have on your team right now, even though ops are so strong and smoking is so strong. But being able to gain the quote unquote free intel at the beginning and throughout the round is so valuable that by skipping that, you put yourselves at a really big disadvantage. So, uh, specifically Intel, I'm talking like Sova, Cypher, Killjoy, these agents with utilities that, when used, give you a general location knowledge of the characters around the map. So I want to hear your
Right.
guys' thought process on who you think the strong intel character is right now.
I think there's quite a few strong intel players. I think at the highest level, it's gonna be Cypher probably. Cypher has the highest pick rate I think right now among ranked players, and for good reason.
Yeah.
You can set up his trapwire. Somebody hits the trapwire, that's instant intel. If they don't hit the trapwire and they break the intel, or they break the trapwire, that's still a piece of intel that you're going to get. So regardless, that trapwire is going to get, if placed correctly, it's going to get some sort of intel, regardless of whether or not somebody hits it.
Right.
I think second to Cypher is Sova at high tier play. Sova is very strong in setting up pushes and
Right.
executes just with that arrow and his drone. So
I would agree.
yeah,
Smithel,
intel very important.
what do you think, Smithel?
Same point. I think Safer right now is almost in a point where he has to be a auto pick for a lot
Okay.
of team comps and a lot of maps,
I would agree.
just because of everything that he brings to it. I mean, you basically got some vision that you can block off with his cages. But like Rums was saying, no matter what you do with your tripwires, you're getting information from it.
Right.
And then what's also kind of nice about it is if you're facing a team that likes to heavy push a certain site, you can always just throw your camera on the other one and then go lean more on the one site side of the map
Okay.
for faster rotation.
Yeah.
That way you still get vision if they try to mix it up.
Right.
But at least you can get a faster rotate because you still got a site on lockdown and you still have multiple ways to kind of slow them. So I definitely think Cypher kind of holds the crown right now.
I would agree. I think Cypher is actually the best character in the game.
Yeah,
and all the roles, regardless.
I'd say so.
Specifically, I think this is because he has a skilled Cypher can kind of hold down a whole site by himself. He can anchor. He's probably the best anchor in the game as far as the trap wires and the cages go for slowing down pushes, creating space, and gaining the intel and knowledge of where people are rotating. He also gets to play kind of this half anchor kind of setup where he can rotate to cut off rotations and look at these rotations, right? But doesn't have to leave his site unattended by leaving things like trap wires and that kind of stuff set up on his locations with the camera. And it just brings an angle that you have to have on your team, because going without the cipher is like almost detrimental, even if you short up by having like KJ Sova for the extra utility or
Agreed.
something like that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And a lot of
that
times we're seeing.
Go ahead, Saul.
I was gonna say a lot of times we actually see Cypher Sova on the same team, especially with a Sage
Yeah.
nerf. But go ahead and talk about the camera. Camera, I think is.
I think his camera is so good, not even just
Yeah.
defensively, but offensively as well.
Yep.
What comes to mind is a short A push on Haven. You can just put that camera down, check that corner real quick, pick the camera up. You got it again in 15 seconds. So
Yeah, no, it's a free peek.
It's really good to clear. It's a free peek. You can clear corners with it very quickly, and if you put the camera up, it gets shot. You know somebody's there.
Exactly.
Just don't go that way.
Instead of getting shot in the head, you got shot in the camera, which is I'd rather get shot in the camera.
Yeah.
To be honest, if
Of course.
I'm speaking for most of the
Good
player
point.
base. But the other agents have their strengths too. So Cypher is extremely strong defensively, and his overall util on offense, while present, isn't necessarily the best. Specifically, I'm talking a lot for, let's say, like Sova Arrow. I'd rather have a Sova Arrow on offense because of the extra util like the drone and stuff takes for offensive points, because I don't really need the intel for the left side of the map because I'm pushing the right side of the map. You know, so I get to have more targeted focus on what I'm trying to learn, which I think has a stronger take, which is why I see so many people I think taking both agents specifically. And then Killjoy's kind of has this niche trap style of play for intel. I know Smithel hated Killjoy, or at least playing against Killjoy on release. I heard lots of complaints.
At least, yeah. At least, I mean, she was
Right.
broken.
Yeah,
You know,
the
the Slave
mollies
patch definitely brought her in.
is ridiculous. But playing the trap style has its benefits as far as intel goes too, with the turret being kind of a pseudo camera, and then having the same kind of kill potential that Sova gets off of his lethal utility. It's kind of a best of, not a best of both worlds, but a summary of Cypher and Sova together in some ways.
Right.
But I think intel's the most important role you can kind of have on the team.
Agreed.
Because of the information that it allows you to formulate your strategies on. A lot of the times, unless you're 5-man quick pushing, the rest of your strategies are now revolving around the immediate intel you get by either taking, a lurk style approach to a certain site, or if you're playing for picks, or even if you're just throwing a utility out to try to get information. These agents kind of excel at acquiring that information on the map that you may be strong or weak on, which opens you up to some mind games. So intel, I think, is the most important, but it's also similarly the most straightforward role to play in Valorant
Hmm.
Yep.
because you're just throwing stuff, seeing what it pings, and then moving on. So
Yeah.
I'd
So-
agree.
Excuse me.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree. Intel is like my second or third most played category. It's very fun to poke and prod, see what you can get, and then to do something off of that intel is very fun too. I know
Right.
that in like the solo queue, it's not that much fun being an intel player because you have to have a team centered kind of. You have to be
Yeah.
organized for your intel to really go far. You know.
For
Yeah, it
sure.
definitely works better with like a 3 or 5 man team. And I mean, one of the things too, like we sit there and say how it's needed on every team, is if this is a role you pick up or you want to play, very, very much it's super important that you guys take the time to learn how to maximize the potential out of each of your utilities. Like, where are the best cam locations? Where do you have to aim with your arrow to get it on various points of the map safely? You know, not necessarily just running in front of a door or hallway to shoot your arrow down, but like, how do you lob it? You know, what's the geometry behind it? So, I mean, it's one of those things that if you're going to do it because it's such a critical role, learn it well, because there's nothing worse than like a cipher that tries to entry frag and dies, and then all of a sudden, or try to push it, like try to push out and dies and didn't lay any traps or anything like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely take that time and take that practice.
But I think it's important to talk about where the intel fits in on executes and pushes because I don't think an intel player should ever be the first in. That belongs to someone like a Phoenix or a one of your niche players that isn't necessarily setting up the push and isn't kitted for that push.
Right.
Like a breach is not a good first player in, regardless of his kit. I mean, he's a little better now, but it's still better for him to be second or third in,
We'll
so
get to
that he
that.
can set up. Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll
But
get to breach.
it's better. Yeah, it's better for him to set up the push as opposed to, being the first entry fragger. But intel is very important. It's not something that you want to have somebody take entry. It's someone that you collect the intel and then you execute off the intel, right? So
Right. So I think the only like hard intel character where their sole job is to gather the intel is Cypher. But Sova and Killjoy play these different positions. Killjoy plays a support role, and I think Sova actually kind of facilitates as an entry fragger himself with his arrow. But we're
Mhm.
gonna get to that. This is one of those special cases where intel kind of augments one of the traditional roles in a way. But because intel usually takes up Cypher plus agent in some way, shape, or form, it kind of augments the second one. Like you have like an off tank and raiding, you have like an off intel in Valorant, where
Yeah.
their job, like they gather intel, but their primary job isn't necessarily to just throw recon arrows, if that makes sense.
Right.
I said we're gonna talk about breach, so we're gonna get into breach. This is the support
Send it.
section. So the support, when I say support, a lot of you might think, what's it called? MOBA support. You might be thinking, a healer or somebody who peels for the team. And if you're thinking along peeling for your team or creating kind of a crowd control resource, this is where your mindset is correct. So the support's job in here is to throw out utilities like smokes or flashbangs to push the enemy team off of their positions and create discomfort to
Mhm.
facilitate your team's strategy and having it occur. Support is probably the hardest role to manage properly in this game because you
I'd
have
say
to
so.
have such a vibrant knowledge of how the game is working and the angles and things like that that you're going to be taking, especially with things like smokes and flashbangs, which I'm proud to say we actually have a pretty good tool for learning these things. Specifically, I'm talking about Mobilytics and their page on how to properly learn characters. So this is something that Smithel showed me a while ago, and we've been talking to the Mobilytics guys. So I actually have it pulled up on stream if you guys are watching the live stream. Perks of catching the live show or YouTube. Where they have this page. This is mobilytics.gg/Valorant. And on this page, they have the agents that are listed. It's right now currently all the way up to date with Killjoy and everything added. But let's say you're wanting to learn the support role, right? And you want to learn Brimstone, who is a pretty difficult smoker, at least for placing smokes properly and how to initiate. You can click
Right.
on Brimstone and check out an overview and some talks about exactly what all of his skills are, but you can check his mollies, his smokes, all kinds of stuff. Right. But I can go down here on this map, and let's say you're going to be on Ascent for your next ranked game. Well, over here, highlighting on brimstones, it tells me where you can throw mollies and smokes to cut off common viewpoints, angles, locations to get kills and resources. And so this has been a game changer for lots of people. And I think that tools like this are important, at least for learning support style stuff. So, but I want to hear your guys' opinions on what
Yeah.
you think support's like in this game.
So supports, I mean, to me, and again, being somebody that basically played a sage who, like you said, it's not necessarily just a healer kind of thing. The support position, again, it's one of those things that it's real tough to balance the feelings of wanting to dive in and try to help get kills and secure kills for your team,
Right.
and then being smart and kind of hanging back and providing the support that you need for your duelists or your entry fraggers to get their job done.
Right.
So let's think, for example, breach. You may have this urge to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to flash out and immediately swing and get things done. But it's more important for you to sit there and say, okay, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to call out when I flash, then immediately follow it with a Phoenix flash who's going to enter. And then, you're really locking down the team's vision for a long,
Correct.
long time.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult role because you have to communicate with your team. And it's one of those things that if you're solo queuing up, playing
Oh,
support's going to be very difficult
it's a
because you don't
monolith.
know. Yeah, you don't know if your team's going to be on comms. You don't know if they're going to ping. You don't know if they're going to
Atrocious.
listen to you. It's real tough. It's real tough to play support solo queue.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
atrocious.
for sure. Rums, you also come from an MMO background,
Yes.
and some rating and things like that. So obviously we hear support, we think healers, the main healers or some of the tanks kind of play that similar role.
Mhm.
He made a good point talking about Sage. I do think Sage is the support in this game. She has heal and res. She's more of your traditional, boost the team up kind of gameplay, and has
Right.
her utils to facilitate entries and executions.
Mhm.
But some other agents that we have highlighted here are Brimstone and Breach, which he also talked about. Who do you think the stronger supports are in the game right now?
Oh, man, that's a tough question. I definitely think Breach is on top of the pile right now with his recent buffs. That extra flash is just so massive.
Yeah,
Supporting is something in Valorant that I haven't had the patience to like really learn and master, but God, is it so important, man. As a operator main, it is very important for me to have supports that know what they're doing and they're able to take care of business so that I am able to frag out and collect the kills that we need to push our team over to victory.
for
That
sure.
sounds very like elitist, like I'm the one fragging out and getting our team over the hill. But no, it's not possible for me to do it without the help of my supports. So,
Yeah, it's a big
so
cohesive strategy. That's for sure.
yeah, very it's a
Mm-hmm.
very planned out in team strategy.
Yeah,
So I think Breach is probably on top right now. Obviously, like Omen, Brimstone are going to be close seconds because you can't play without the smoke. Rather, you shouldn't play without the smoke. So those two are obviously very strong, just because they're the two main smokers. We talked about that in a previous episode, but um, yeah, I think Breach is looking very good right now. I'd be very interested to see how he looks in a competitive tournament style right
Yeah.
now
yes,
because he is performing so well at the pro level right now
we're
in
gonna
like
get to
rated and
that too.
above.
We're gonna get to that
Yeah,
too because we have some
but
events coming up to talk about later.
that's my point out too, man.
Yeah, I agree. We're actually gonna talk Omen. I didn't include him in the support because he's one of the hybrid characters in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and because this game operates off of an agent style, I think one important thing to take note of is that everyone who logs in can't have a smoke and two flashes. Like in
Right.
CS, everyone who buys can have a smoke and two flashes in their inventory, meaning that anybody can get plea of support for that round depending on your positioning, or anybody can be the entry fragger and pop these things. But here it really facilitates your strategy based off of the agents that you pick up. And the role that you play very strongly corresponds to the agents that you play. Me being an entry fragger, I thrive on agents like Phoenix, Reyna. I can sometimes be on where I'm playing entry with utility for myself, kind of as a selfish player to help facilitate trades for the rest of the team. You
Mm.
know, and so the next portion after this kind of support era where we have the flash support, the crowd control
Yeah.
support in breach, we have the facilitators like Sage and Brimstone who really have this
Mm-hmm.
execution heavy mindset. This is where your kind of hybrid characters get to kind of slot in on the backup slot where you have like Omen or Sova You know, people like that. And those specifically, I'm talking about. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit for you guys because it's the lurkers. So these kind of lurk anchor point role characters kind of get to flex between being this extra support agent or this extra entry agent or this extra whatever, and they kind of get to play on their own standalone kind of lone wolf play style. I'm thinking people like Raze, Omen, these kind of self-sufficient fraggers who don't really need help to do what they do. You know, Omen has this big AoE flash. He can smoke for the team across the map and then smoke for himself. He has the teleport. You know, he gets to play the mind games. Raze just throws damage in 7 directions and hopes to ping somebody enough to where she can tag him on the way out and get a kill. You know, these agents kind of they get to flex around, keep the opponents on their toes and keep them guessing, which is where the strategy of the game kind of comes into play, and the chess portion of placing your players in a certain a certain way.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that the roles that are displayed by Riot on Valorant, like the initiator, the controller, those are all good, and that is like by definition what that agent does. But it is important to know these extra roles because these are how teams are selected
For
in
sure.
competitive play. It's not just a controller or a duelist, because a duelist like Phoenix can be more than just a self-sufficient fragger. He is that hybrid support duelist role. You know, he does more than just frag for himself. So it's important to learn the delineation between what's on the screen and how these agents can actually be applied.
Yeah, and the one thing, Saul, that you said that I kind of liked, and it kind of ties into what Rum says about, like, you know, how do you want to apply the agent's
Right.
toolkit, is like Ray's, for example. Let's talk to her, and you said like, oh, you know, she can basically do her own thing and be fine.
For sure.
And that's kind of why I think she's so strong. And I know we have her in the lurker category in our notes, but you know, she can be an entry frag. She can sit there and be a flanker. You can sit there and say, look, I want her to go around different range because she has a kit that she can be very self-sufficient upon.
Exactly.
And or she can really play it into a team take environment whenever you're trying to push a point. So, you know, you can't just sit there and say, okay, she's the same as a Phoenix or she's the same as a Reyna just because they have the same Valorant defined role. You know, so you really got to look around, what else does your team have? And then how do you play a kit like Raze or a kit like Omen in a way that really maximizes them to the potential of your current team comp and map?
No, 100%, which is where this like flexible kind of lurking role stands out. And you mentioned Raze being an entry. That's another point is, you know, she does function pretty well as an entry agent. Another set of the entry fraggers. What I'm talking about specifically with entry fragging is they're the people that kind of take the initial push, the initial corner, and try to take a one-on-one really quickly or a one-on-two sometimes. And their job is to trade out. So their job is to peek, try to get a kill, and if they die after that, it's fine. They've facilitated their job and kind of poked a hole in the defense, allowing the rest of the team to kind of take their advantage and kind of move through to facilitate these trades. So the entry fraggers, they're taking the entry points, they're forcing trades to get control of that site. I'm looking at like Phoenix, Reyna, these kind of self-serving pop flash agents that kind of get to, I don't know, aggressively poke a hole. They get to kind of turn 0 to 100 on a dime.
Use and abuse. Yeah.
Right, which is really important. Jet can also play this role on her eco rounds with things like knives and the dash, you know, kind of these slippery, hard to deal with agents. They, you know, they'll have self healing, so they get a profitable trade and they don't get traded out. They can mitigate that, you know, damage that they end up taking. You know, it's a nice idea to always have a dedicated entry fragger. This is like, you know, and then you also get kind of your flex entries with Sova, who gets to, you know, toss the aggressive recon arrow, pings a couple people, and then swings a corner, or drones and then facilitates, you know, maybe the breach to swing a corner or the brimstone to swing a corner by following the drone in, because then you have an extra cone of vision for free. You know, that's kind of something to think about.
And I, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I'd say the one thing too that, you know, when we're talking about entry and as a role, to kind of tie this back down to, you know, what should you play, when should you play, kind of thing, is when you're solo queuing. My opinion is this is the best role to play. When you're really trying to rank up and you're not going in as a 5 stack or a 4 stack or a 3 stack, pick entry, because at
Yes.
least you know that you're going to be able to, rely on yourself. You know what your job is, and that is to get on point and get a kill. So it's simple, So if you see a broom setting up a smoke somewhere or something like that, you follow that and then you do your job. But you don't have to necessarily try to communicate or coordinate with a team what you need to do. And then also, if you have a team that's kind of all over the place and spread, you can be the Reyna and just get a kill, heal up, get another kill, heal up, and just make picks for your
Right.
team. So I would very strongly encourage people that if you're solo queuing, to at least have 1 or 2 of these types of agents in your back pocket ready to go.
For sure. For solo queue players, I think it's important to diversify your agent portfolio. If you know you're going to be solo queuing, you're not going to be buddying up. It's important to have a couple of roles so you can fit your best slot. Because we've all had games where you get in and you're like, "Hey everybody, what's up?" And then you look to the agent select screen and all 4 of them are already insta locked, and you kind of have to be like, we need smokes or we're gonna die. That happens to everybody.
Right.
So it's important to have a variety of agents to play, but don't go too wide. I'd strongly suggest having like 2, maybe
2 or
3 when you get good, and then that's about it.
An optional third pick.
Yeah,
But
just because by spreading yourself too thin and not specializing and being nuanced in what you're trying to do, you open yourself up to some common mistakes that could cause you to die, and dying is never good. So,
nope.
Who would have thought? The next thing I want to talk about before getting to the conceptual roles is the sniper. So this isn't really a defined role in Valorant, as far as it doesn't really have a tag to it like initiator or duelist. But opping in CS, the AWP, and opping in Valorant, OP, which is it's not the guns OP, it's abbreviated OP. Sniping in general is a really strong faceted point for most FPS games, whether it's Call of Duty, CS:GO, Valorant, Rainbow Six. Having a long range sniper helps you to hold down different lanes and control the pace of the match.
Yes.
And Rums is our resident sniper for our play group. Hey, Shadow Surfer 7, I really appreciate that follow, man. Thanks for coming in and chiming in.
Yeah, thanks, man.
But Rums is our resident opper and jet main. He's the toxic one of the play group because he plays jet. But he's the sniper. I kind of want to toss it over to you, man, and give me the rundown of what you think sniping is like in this game and what the kind of focal points are to be kind of for this role that we got going on.
Sheesh, man. I mean, it's very important. I'll put it that way. First and foremost, it's very important. You have essentially in your hands a gun that is able to kill anybody as long as you're mechanically sound.
Right.
And I think having that ability as a player is, first of all, it's very fun. It's very fun to be able to challenge and duel people individually and know that if you're mechanically better, then your op shot's going to ring out and you're going to get that kill. It's very rewarding. And if you're on point that day, you could get up to 29, 30 shots that ring out and you get that kill. It's very gratifying. In terms of how the op fits into the meta right now, it's a staple. I think it's very important to have at least one operator. We see a double op meta right now, which on some maps where 2 ops is better than 1, but 1 op is mandatory, right? Being able to cover that long angle to perhaps hold back a push, or when somebody is peeking you dry or without utility. When somebody's peeking you dry, it's very important to have somebody that can cover that long angle and punish that peek, because if nobody's there to punish it, then they're going to run all over you as the defense.
Exactly.
And offensive opping is a little more difficult because it requires a more aggressive style of play.
Right.
Because the defense is under no obligation to come after you or to peek you. They could just sit on site and they'll win the round eventually. So you have to be able to use your mechanics and your footwork. I say footwork, but movement, to be able to clear corners, to check defensive angles with that operator. And it's a very powerful tool, because if you land your shot, the enemy is going to die.
Yeah.
So
the one thing that you said there, which I think is kind of cool, is when you sit there and said, like, hey, use your footwork. Not only does it mean when you're actually watching a point to make sure you're positioned well, but also to mix up necessarily like where you're opping from. Like if you're
Right.
the opper and you're just always going to do the same spot every round, no matter what, the enemy team's going to eventually catch on to it and just keep you locked
For
down.
sure. Yeah.
However, like the one thing that you do very well, Rums, is you know when's a good time to switch up points, round starts and things like that. Because if you can get them to respect the op and have no clue where it's at, the enemy team's just going to start wasting utility all over the map
Yep.
trying to figure out where that opera is, and it's going to put them in a real poor position when they go to execute on point. So having that knowledge and that mindset whenever you're playing this character of knowing when's a good time to be on which point and kind of trying to be in the enemy's head to a point that you can predict where they're going or follow their patterns
Yeah.
is a huge benefit to a team.
Yeah. It's only happened a couple of times where you just develop that sixth sense as to, okay, they're gonna go here next round, and then
Yeah.
sure as the world, man, they pop around the corner, and getting that frag and just knowing that you're just ruining someone's day, man, it's just
It
so
feels
fun.
good. Yeah.
But it's very. I got one more thing to add here.
You
It's
got it, man.
like you said, Smith. It's very important, and it's an essential skill to be able to switch up your op angle. Holding one angle the entire game is not going to do anybody good. That being said, if you're holding an angle and the initial defensive intel points somewhere else, man, don't be afraid to leave, right?
Yes.
As long as you're not dying, there's not a huge risk to leaving that angle because you can always retake, right? I think retaking is not something that happens a lot at the lower elo. You have an anchor on site, like a
Yeah.
Cypher or a Killjoy. They're anchoring down a site like Haven A. They get 4 or 5 man rushed and there's a failed utility, or they just play it wrong and all of a sudden they're on site. Man, don't be afraid to leave, right? As long as the rest of your team's alive, it is perfectly acceptable for you to be able to take it on the post plan. So that's
sure.
just a little side point that's off the script here, but just remember that it's very important.
Yeah, no, for sure. Specifically oppers, at least snipers, in this game, I think are facilitated not as to a strict adherence to which agents they should be playing. I do think that if you plan to primarily be a sniper, you need to have Jet in your back pocket. That kind of needs to
Yeah.
be your like, I'm having a bad day, I'll whip out the Jet and I'll do okay. That's just the strongest sniper player right now. It's just the strongest
Me.
sniper agent. Yeah. Your backup playing ranked, specifically, I think really needs to be Raze as a backup. She's got some strong movement tech that she can do with her blast packs, and some self peel by throwing just literal damage at the opponents and causing them to have to run away so she can kind of move from her angle. But if you're playing coordinated 5 stacks, whether that's 10 mans or customs or even just 5 stacking ranked with a couple of trusted buddies, Breach actually has some interesting play as an opper because he has super long range flashes and stuns and some stuff like that where he can
Angle
throw.
clearances.
Yeah, he can like force people off of an angle or out of an angle. He can flash for himself if he needs to or for an enemy team and kind of play this long range support agent, which I don't think a lot of people do necessarily, but it's something I picked up watching Shazam a little bit because he has a backup Breach that he's played every now and then and caused me to think about it a little bit more and really understand the theory behind it. So the last little bit of role that I want to talk about is the theoretical role, which is IGL or in-game leader. This is your main caller and communicator. And one of the important things in FPS games is to understand that they are very fast-paced. So a lot of useless chatter or useless communication is actually super detrimental to your overall goal of winning a game because it distracts from sounds that matter in the game with audio cues or actual communication that takes hold. So if you're not the IGL for your group, your primary communication focus is to throw out, I hear 2 footsteps A, or we have Cypher on C, or, hey, they pushed me on A, 22 on Reyna, or whatever. And that's
Yeah.
kind of your primary calls in your location. Like, hey, I saw someone mid window. The IGL is the person who needs to be calling, okay, we're going to stack A side and we're going to run a 3-2 defensive split, or we're going to run a 3-1-1 defensive split, or start pinching, or look for the flank, or let's rotate, or stuff like that, and make these kind of game swinging calls and opportunities. And it's your job as the IGL to kind of keep up with the overall intel of the match. Where were agents last seen? What utils have been thrown? historically, this has been my role. I've fulfilled that in a lot of Call of Duty gameplay and Overwatch, mainly because in Overwatch, it benefited me to be able to call my strats for my tanks to follow so that we could push where we needed to. And in Call of Duty, I was always the rifler that would lurk or control most of the map for my team, allowing to kind of facilitate for strategic ideas to come out. I've done this one a little. Hey, Big Easy, I appreciate that follow, man. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
When you talk leaders and things like that, Psalm too, one
Sure.
thing that I think is important to really highlight, and this is something that I learned in like all of my years playing MOBAs, is the right call may not be the right call in that moment. So, for example, if you have a leader and he says, "Look, we need to push on to site B, and this is why we're going to do it," even if you think that's a bad call and your team's going that way,
Do it.
follow with them. There is
Yeah.
nothing worse than peeling off by yourself because you say, I know C's open, we need to go C, and just doing it by yourself and then leaving your team at a 4v5 on B. That is not the right move.
For sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can get angry about it. You can try to explain the next round, hey, this is why I don't think we should have done that, and then hopefully learn from it. But
It doesn't work.
always stick with your team and follow the strategy. Don't like peel off, because then if you do and the team loses, okay, you lost maybe like you would have if you went to the point and followed the team, but now it's kind of on you and it's your fault because you made it even harder for your team to achieve what they were trying to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So very much follow that.
And you always have a better shot charging in as 5 as opposed to charging in as 1.
Correct.
Right. You at the very least, if you get picked and now you're down to 4, you should be picking up that trade. So
Yeah.
it's better to charge in as 5 on the wrong call than charge in as 1 on the right call, I would say.
Right. And don't be afraid to, man, if you're solo queuing, duo queuing, don't be afraid to try to speak up and be that main communicator in your ranked games. A lot of the times people get into these, solo queue games and nobody will talk because people are nervous or they're shy. We're all kind of these social gaming outcasts for the most part, and they don't want to talk. If you just speak up and like say, hey guys, I think we should push A this round. And you get 3 people to do it, and like, let's push 3 people A, and 2 people can lurk through mid and try to take control there. You'll have a much better success rate by working as an organized stack, even if that organized stack is making the textbook wrong decision, because there's strength in numbers in this game, which is an important concept to think about for sure. That being said, if someone's like, we're going to wait until 30 seconds to push a site, don't listen to them. Don't be stupid. Say, no, you're stupid. We should do this instead. And then, don't actually, say, hey, you're stupid, but be nice about it. Be like, no, let's try this out. Change the strats up. Don't be afraid to be that piece of communication. And it's just, that's a really big piece to this game is communication, learning how to talk to people, how to speak. That's a very, very big deal. Another thing I want to talk about is having too much of one role. Because obviously people get set in stone. They're like, oh man, I love Intel. My 3 characters that I play are Cypher, Sova, and Killjoy. Those are the characters that I play. I don't play anybody else. And then you get into a ranked game and you're solo queue and they insta-lock Cypher, Sova, and you're like, man, dang it. What do I do now? Because if you pick Killjoy, you're saturating your team, and you're preventing that smoke controller from really having a pivotal impact, or you're preventing yourself from an entry fragger or from another lurker or something like that, which can create a dyssynergy within your team comp. So I think that having too much of any role or category is actually a larger detriment than you playing something you're maybe inherently uncomfortable with, as long as that character isn't super technical.
Yeah.
So
like a breach.
Yeah, as long as you're not picking like, oh well, I guess I'm just gonna default to breach or cipher, it's really easy to screw those champs up, and we have to be wary of that, for sure.
And that being said, though, if you do default to that and it's not your main champ, don't feel bad about asking, like, hey, where should I put a camera, or where's a good spot for this trap?
Yeah,
I mean,
just ask.
We had a game earlier this week where somebody
Oh my God.
says that they're like, hey, I don't play safer, but they didn't tell us this until it was like the second to last round.
Yeah.
And they either weren't putting traps or weren't putting cameras, or they were putting it like behind them, like on flank positions. So they weren't even trying to stop the entry. And when we called them out, he goes, nobody told me how to play safer. We said, we shouldn't have to tell you, but you never asked. You never let us know that this isn't your main or you're not comfortable with it.
Exactly.
We would have pinged the map and said, trap here, trap here. Like, we would have tried to help you learn that position. So don't be afraid to ask. Like if you see somebody like auto pick or auto fill your main, sit there and say, "Hey, look, what do we need? I'm not the best brim in the world, but mark where you want the smokes, and I'll put them there." It's
Yeah.
that simple. Most of
And
the time, people are okay with that.
yeah, and Mobalytics is another great resource for something that you're not familiar with as well. They, like we said earlier in the cast, man, they've got just tons of resources that are available to you, that you can just read for free and just learn where the best spots for smokes are, where
100%.
traps are, where a good
Yeah.
molly spot is. Man, it's so important to be able to have something like that like at your disposal, man. It's
Yeah,
super good.
yeah. I mean, if you have
Yeah.
two screens, just have the game on one, put like the map on the other one, and then you have it. You sit there and say, okay,
Yeah.
here's where I'm at. Here's what I should be doing. Here's like the angles. It if there's tools out there for you guys to utilize, don't be afraid to use them. I mean, that's
It,
going to be how you improve. Don't sit there and say, I'm going to try to figure this out on my own and be bullheaded about it.
yeah, it's about
People have figured this out. Do it.
like a
Exactly.
build guide on like League or Smite or something. Like if you're not playing an agent that you're familiar with, you look up a build guide. Like what item's good. At least I do that almost
Oh
all the
yeah.
time. I did that in Smite and League. Like if I wasn't playing a god or a champion that I was familiar with, build guide. And then more often than not, that was more than enough to at least make me not useless. So yeah, use resources, guys, for
Yes.
sure.
Do not be scared. Now again, I have it on my screen for the people watching stream or YouTube. There's a guide section, man, and it literally just goes through. You can go in a custom map and just place traps, and it says these are the easy traps, these are the hard traps, these are whatever. And again, they do it for every single one of these agents. It's such a good resource. And now I think they even have a account link section where you can like look at data breakdown, like your headshot percentage, your win loss on
Yeah.
maps, your
Yeah,
performance. It's such a wonderful tool, guys.
yeah.
Please check out our friends
It
at Mobalytics for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely nice, and to kind of follow up with Solom's thing about the profile is actually like when it loads in your matches, it'll give you tags afterward that say like, hey, you played cold. Next time, go warm up in advance, or hey,
Yeah.
your econ wasn't great, and it'll give you tips for saying your combat score, you're hitting body shots. So it's analyzing everything you do in game, so you can really try to find ways to improve. If you sit there and see you're somebody like me that has like a sub 10% headshot, okay, I need to move my cursor higher, and I need to be cognizant about how I'm thinking that. So really like look into the analytics of your play through these types of tools, and it'll do nothing but help you as you
Yeah.
kind of progress down.
If you're serious about improving, man, it's one of the easiest things you can do is just look at what you did wrong and then try to improve it. At the end of every game, man, if your elo is low, try to come away with one thing that you could have done better, and before you know it, you'll take off. Take off.
Yeah, no, for sure. Having the open mind to recognize you making a mistake is super duper important. So we're gonna move on. I got our esports section. It's a little bit smaller this week. Not a lot of events kind of already happened. We talked about a lot of major stuff last week, specifically because the Ignition series on NA ended. The last one was a pot flash. We have our last EU Ignition series, which is the Blast Invitational, coming up. I believe it starts tomorrow or the 11th. Let me double check. Starts tomorrow for the EU. It's the Pulse series, Pulse, like checking a pulse. This is gonna be a 4-team invitational series. No, sorry, not Pulse. Blast. Click on the wrong tabs. Blast Invitationals EU. It starts the 11th. 50,000 euro pot, which is nuts. That's a lot of money.
That's a nice payday.
It is a nice payday. First place is getting 25,000 of that. That's wild. But specifically, we have a 4-team setup. It's going to be Ninjas in Pajamas, Fun Plus Phoenix, G2, and Team Liquid, kind of the powerhouse of the EU, working on this kind of bracket setting. The entire thing is best of 3 until grand finals, which are best of 5. And I'm really excited. We have some interesting matchups. The opening round is Fun Plus Phoenix and Nip, which is cool, right? Because those are some interesting teams. They have some off the wall stuff going on. But the highlight tomorrow is G2 versus Liquid. Right off the get go, the two monoliths of EU Valorant are playing in a best of 3. So I'm super hyped about this one. G2 is really good at multi-game series. They have a lot of really good adaptation they take on. But Scream has been on fire as of recently, with his stream and little events and practices that I've gotten to see. He's nuts. He's really found a home
Yeah.
in this game. So I am super duper excited to see everything that they've got going on with him for the tournament coming up. So we got that going on for EU, and then we have our Pulse series. So Pulse is the NA series, I promise. It's a 10K prize pool, but it starts tomorrow. There's 18 teams in this event.
It's a lot
over the course of 4 days. This is all going to be like tier 2 teams, tier 2, tier 3 Valorant teams for NA. We have China Wind, Complexity, Second Wind, Spot Up, Mamba Mode, Noble Esports, Pretty Boys, Renegade, Up for Sale, Built by Gamers, Laterbot, Luminosity, Morning Light, Gonzo, Rise, Space Station Gaming, Shiba, and Beast Coast. We have 2 groups of 4, 2 groups of 5 playing in this tournament, and then moving into a playoff. The group stage is best of 1, which with so many teams I understand. It makes me sad, but I understand. I don't mind group stages when they're best of 1. It's kind of whatever. But the entire playoff, it's a round robin best of 1, I think, or Swiss, one of the two,
Okay.
1 or 2, and then the playoffs are single elimination best of 3, with the top 2 teams of each group moving forward, which is kind of cool. So payouts for first through fourth. I'm excited. We get to see some kind of the up-and-comers and stuff that's changing. Specifically, Space Station, I'm really interested to see how they perform. They picked up a pretty good roster. And then we have some other guys coming in. Luminosity is kind of a upstanding. Complexity. You got Renegades and, of course, Beast Coast. These are kind of established organizations, so I would expect them to have some teams kind of at least wound up. So that'll be kind of exciting to watch. I'm going to try to catch as many games on that as I can. But we'll see how that, exactly what I get to take care of for that. And then finally, my favorite part.
The big piece.
Roster
your
changes.
Big piece.
My roster changes. First of all, Food and Crashies, they're out. They're kicked. No more. They are gone from T1, taken off of the roster. T1 has come out with a statement. They said it had nothing to do with any kind of DMs that had been leaked. There were some DMs that came out about Food and Crashies talking bad about a teammate. If you want to know more about it, you can go and find it. This podcast is not for stirring up drama, but they have been removed from their roster. Presumably, when I saw this announcement, I was like, oh, they're going to pick up Steel. They're going to pick up a new guy on their roster. They didn't. But they've got some room now. Skadoodle's probably coming back soon. And they didn't really vibe, I guess, together. But these are 2 really, really strong players coming off of a roster that I don't think they meshed with. I don't think their play styles agreed. These guys are kind of aggressive. They're young. And they don't mesh with the calculated style that Skadoodle and Brax kind of have as far as leading the rest of that team go.
No, I agree.
I'm kind of wishy-washy
Food
on.
like a TSM player, man.
He's good,
in
but
terms of aggression.
he fits in kind of a strange glove. Him being on TSM would be cool, but he doesn't fill a role that they'd want to replace. Like their weakest player is like Hazed, sort of, I guess, with the Sage nerf, but he doesn't play the same support style that Sage plays. Cutler's kind of popped off in the last couple events, though.
Yeah, he's
TSM is done, so he's shown improvement.
Not doing him enough credit. But
what I am excited for is Crashies. One of the strongest Cypher players that was around for a while is now a free agent again, with a lot of rosters looking for space, especially my favorite team, 100 Thieves. So 100 Thieves picked up Steel. So now we have Hiko and Steel and Nitro. We have two legendary CS players for just 2 of the biggest names to ever play NACS, and Steel, one of the most infamous players to play NACS, with the whole match fixing scandal. But he's been playing for like 6 or 7 years, I think, after that, and no dice on any kind of cheating, and still leading the way. He's an extremely accomplished IGL, and he has announced that he's stepping down from the IGL position to Nitro. But he's going to be helping Nitro in developing strategies and gameplay, plans, like a playbook for this beginning of the thing. So they have 3 of the best TAC FPS minds on this roster now.
It's insane, man.
This team is stacked so far, and they still have 2 spots left to fill, which is not an easy task. I wouldn't be surprised to see this go another couple months before they really fill out a 5-man with no big events coming up for NA. But what if Crashy gets picked up for 100 Thieves?
Crashy's in ACU.
ASU has said he's not playing professional.
I know. He said
I
he hasn't
want
played
it to
professional.
happen. It'd be
Pipe
such a
dream, man.
clutch.
Pipe
Yeah,
dream.
it'd be such a clutch fitting. He vibes so strong with the rest of that roster and with the organization as a whole. It'd be a great fit. I just don't think he wants that stress after the Apex
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
But he'd be ridiculous. I think Nitro's the opper. He's been playing Jet a ton
Yeah, he
and
has.
opping a ton. So I don't think picking up Ace is in the cards. I could see Crashies being picked up as a Cypher player though for this 100 Thieves roster.
Yeah, I could.
100%.
I could.
He under that kind of three-winged guidance of those three, he could mature into like the perfect anchor that they need him to be on that Cypher, and then leaves Hiko to adapt this controller style play with Omen
Yeah, like
that
a
he's
more
been
aggressive
exhibiting.
Omen.
Yeah, so right now they're mainly looking for that dedicated intel player, specifically Cypher, unless Cypher sees like some gameplay shred nerf or something coming soon. You know, knock on wood that he doesn't, because I don't know. I like playing him. I would prefer he
Right.
doesn't get neutered, but we'll see how it goes. And they need an entry. They're still lacking an entry. Steel's been primarily playing Killjoy for his switchover. He'll see him widen his hero pool hopefully soon. But they need a strong entry player, and I don't know who's lurking out there right now, personally. So maybe in this tier 2 event that's coming up soon with the Pulse invitation, or excuse me, Pulse series,
Mhm.
we have a lot of unsigned teams. Pretty Boys up for sale, and I think that actually might be it for right now. And then a lot of small guys that they might be able to pick somebody up or catch somebody looking for a strong team to kind of lay waste with. But that's all
Right.
I got for esports, man. Real quick and easy this week.
He has a pretty slow week.
Yeah.
Glad
Yeah.
with all the reviews with Pop Flash.
Yep.
So it was
Yep.
a good
Great.
enough news to where we can talk about it and enjoy it.
But I don't have to do it for years and years. Uh-oh.
Oh no, we lost Rums.
I did lose Rums. He needs to come back so my camera's
back.
fixed.
Excuse me. I just got lost for a second.
Oh no. He's back though. We did it.
Oh.
All good.
That's
All
good.
good. Easy peasy. But yeah.
Yeah. Some news to get excited about, and but not too much to overwhelm. So it's good.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Good week.
But beyond Valorant, we had some pretty cool news. We had some pretty cool events going on. Not as much as last week, which is fine. Every now and then we need a chance to just kind of take a deep breath, and relax in the world of gaming. But Smith, you had your ear on the ground, man. You found some cool stuff. What you got going?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, it's been relatively slow. I mean, at least what I followed. But I think the biggest thing that came out in the past couple days is the next gen for Xbox has been officially announced, and the prices have been set, and the pre-order date
Yep.
and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be 2 models at launch. The launch is November 10th. You can begin pre-ordering as early as September 22nd. There's a Series S and a Series X. The Series X is going to retail for about $500, with the Series S, which is the smaller version, both in size and storage, for $299.
Ooh.
And one of the things that they're doing, which I think is cool, they implemented it for the Xbox One relatively late into the lifestyle as they were trying to get more people onto the platform and away
Yeah.
from Sony and such, was the idea of, I kind of think of it like a cell phone plan, where you pay, I think, for the Series X like $35 a month for 2 years,
That's about right.
and you get access, like you get the console and all that good stuff and access to it. And I think it may include live. I know in the past it did.
It's not a bad deal.
And so basically at that point you're paying essentially like $20 or so a month for the system, and they have announced basically all kinds of stuff for like backwards compatibility and the whole system. And in my opinion, the whole Xbox Ultimate Game Pass or whatever right now is probably one of the best deals in gaming,
Yeah.
because you can get the PC versions and the Xbox versions, and all kinds of good stuff. And so that's going to be there too. So they said something like, if you include the backwards compatibility stuff, it's going to launch with like 1,000 different games you can play on day
Wow.
one.
That's nuts.
So I mean, I don't know how accurate that number is, but just kind of what I'm hearing. But
Yeah.
it's definitely, if you're a console gamer, something worth checking out. I don't think the prices are as bad as we thought that they were going to be.
No, not at all.
I heard upwards of $700 for the
For
X
sure.
initially in rumors. So yeah, $500 is nice for those kind of folks.
I'm still a big proponent of PC first, man. If you're gonna get into game, you want to seriously game, and the game that you're wanting to be competitive in, if you're a competitive person, isn't console exclusive. Just build a computer.
Yep.
It'll benefit you so much in the long run of having a nice machine to work with. As a software like computer guy, outside of gaming, you get a lot of benefits, but that's not bad at all, man. The 299 number, just like looking at me, I'm like, that's like Forza and some fighting games for group sessions with buddies. That's
Yeah.
not that bad of a deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
cool with that.
For the specs in it and things like that, I mean, $300 is pretty good. And like you said, if you're doing
Cheaper than
something
my graphics
competitive,
card.
yeah, if you're doing something competitive, PC is 100% the way to go, in my opinion. Mouse and keyboard all the way. But, I also like playing, things like, XCOM or single player games. And
Right,
sometimes it's just nice to kind of lay in bed and play it on my TV.
for
And
sure.
sure, you can do that with a computer, but, it's pretty plug and play, which is
It's not,
nice.
it's not the same.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
so
sure. That's awesome news. I'm glad to see that that's coming out. And Microsoft did pull the trigger first, so maybe we'll see PS5 prices coming out
yeah,
soon, which I'm
yeah, I
more
wouldn't be
interested in.
surprised if we hear it soon.
Undoubtedly.
But that should be coming out kind of soon. Rums, you have some interesting
So
stuff going on.
yeah, man, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is going to release a week early.
Ooh,
So it went from the 17th of November to the 10th of November.
epic.
And interesting correlation that I'm seeing right now is that the Xbox Next Gen launches on November 10th. So I'm curious if something went on between Microsoft and Ubisoft
Yeah, because this
to
might be a launch
launch that.
title. Yeah.
Yeah, to
Yep.
launch it a week early, maybe get some special edition consoles rolling out. So
If
And
they make
that's that's the type of game that you can actually sell consoles on, because
exactly,
there's tons of people that just play like Assassin's Creed, and if you can sit there and
Mhm.
say, hey, look, it comes out, we'll package it in, or you can buy
bet.
it with it,
Dude, if they
so
make
be it.
like a $350 version of the Series S and it's got like Thor on it, or like like a lightning arm blade assassin or some kind of cool like skin something to it,
yeah,
I'll think about it.
yeah,
Maybe
no, yeah, for
it's
sure.
that would get me thinking about buying a console as a PC guy, because that's just cool.
So there's
Mhm.
that. I also think personal theory that they chose to do it a week earlier just because Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out around that time too. I think it's on the
Yep,
19th
Yep.
instead of the
yep.
17th.
They want
So
better sales.
I think they wanted a week to have Ivor have the spotlight, and maybe it was a marketing move with Xbox to drop that at the same time. Could
Yeah.
be. That's just speculation, but and then the second thing to follow up in some of our or our news weeks past that we've kind of hit on was that Apple fired a countersuit
Yep.
at Epic,
Yep.
and they're seeking punitive damages for what Epic has done
This
on the App
listen,
Store.
this countersuit is complete garbage. BS. Even though Epic doesn't have like a leg to stand on for their suit, Apple's just trying to drown them in papers so that they drop the original lawsuit so they don't have to deal with it.
Yeah,
That's 100% what this is. There's no way that anybody finds punitive damages against an almost $1 trillion company
nah,
with a small game develop, or not a small game, but like a game developing company or platform. Like, it's not going to happen. They're just trying to drown them in paperwork, which I understand.
yeah,
I get it. It's business.
it's
It's
a
how it goes.
tactic. It's a tactic, but
But
other
it
than that,
is
man,
that's
all I
that's
had.
nuts. So for me, mine's recent news because I haven't got to pay much attention to gaming in the last week or so. But it's the Cold War. I've been talking about Call of Duty like the last 3 weeks in every
Like,
episode. I'm excited. I like Call of Duty. It's a classic. I suck at it now. Terrible. But Cold War did a multiplayer reveal today, event today. Today being September 9th of 2020, where a bunch of streamers and professional players got to play the game live on stream. They did a big info like video session with Vonderhaar and all the devs, talking about map design, game modes, the way that create a class and that kind of stuff is going to work. It's chock full of information. It's all over YouTube. This is not a Call of Duty podcast, as much as it might sound like it is at the end of it. So if you want to check that out, go check out the video on the Black Ops YouTube channel for that information. But man, they got some cool modes. Vehicles are coming, which sucks because screw vehicles. They're
true.
don't belong in FPS
Agreed.
except for like Halo. But the gunplay looks pretty clean, looks pretty crisp. One thing I noticed: score streaks instead of kill streaks, so they don't reset on death anymore. So if you want that chopper gunner, you're gonna get it eventually, unless you suck.
Really, really bad.
Yeah, but all the gunplay looks really clean. All the attachment stuff, you can have like up to 8 attachments on a gun with a couple of perk setups and loadouts, which is nice. And they kind of subliminally were like, "Hey, zombies exist." So we are going to get zombies back. I don't know if it's going to be free, but we're going to get zombies back. And then they're going to bring back Warzone. And they've actually worked with the sister company, and developed a follow-up to the current. I guess there's like a timeline to Warzone, if anybody knew
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
But it will
I'm sure, yeah.
follow along the same Warzone platform and style of play as the current iteration of Warzone. It'll still be free. It'll still be cosmetic only. So they're going to add weapons and update the existing weapons and change the map a little bit and some operators and that kind of thing, so that it feels kind of like an addition to the game instead of Warzone 2, so to speak.
Yeah, like
Which
a
is
DLC.
which is kind of cool. Also, there's going to be full crossplay and cross progression
Nice.
for all the platforms, which is really super sick.
Good.
That's just super hype because that means that there'll be crossplay for zombies. So if Zombies is free, I can download it for free and play with my friends that have regular consoles that like to play Zombies, which is always kind of a nice
That's
trade-off.
super dope.
Good.
Super
Good.
cool.
But yeah, Cold War looks pretty cool. If you're interested in Call of Duty at all, check that out for sure. Had a lot of crisp, clean stuff. They had talked a bunch of tech mumbo jumbo that I'm sure some people care about, like me. And they talked a lot about the new trade-offs and what everything's going on. But that's it for me as far as Beyond Valorant goes today. As always, please be sure to follow the show, One Tap Cast, on all media, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, everywhere. Haven't made an Instagram yet, but if there's interest, I'll make an Instagram, because who doesn't want to see more of our beautiful faces? So be sure to follow us at One Tap Cast everywhere and anywhere you can find us. And for sure, follow me, Solemn FPS, on Twitch and Twitter. And you can catch me live most of the time on Mondays and Tuesdays. I stream this show on Wednesdays, and occasionally later in the week I'll throw an extra stream every now and then on Thursday or Friday, depending on schoolwork. Smithel, where can our lovely listeners follow you?
Twitch.tv/Smithel or at Smithel Gaming on Twitter if you want to follow me there. Or the best way is obviously jump into our Discord, and you can talk to me there all the time.
The link for that is down below in the bio, so you can find it in the link to our YouTube video if you're listening on YouTube, or I believe you can find it on the link of our Twitter if you go to our Twitter if you're listening on Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or what have you. Rums, where are you at, man?
I am at everywhere. Actual Rums. Link below.
Yes, everything is linked below. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. Hit us up with any kind of feedback, comments you have. Join us in the Discord. Come hang out. Come say hi. Have a
Yeah,
great day.
please.
And as always, we'll catch you next time.